Whenever the issue of nationalism or widespread repatriation gets talked about, you usually get some multiculturalist, or more likely someone calling themselves a civic nationalist, getting up and saying, oh, you can never do this. What are you going to do? DNA test everyone in the country. You can't filter who you want to keep in and who you want to kick out. It will never work. You haven't thought about this. You're too stupid to work out how to do it. It won't work. End of debate. Now, what I want to do here is to show how stupid that argument is by looking at the Estonian citizenship law of 1995. Pretty obscure law, I'm sure you'll agree, but it is pretty enlightening. Now, I'm saying here that nationalism and repatriation go hand in hand, whatever civic nationalists might say, and by definition that they go hand in hand. The word nationalism comes from the word nation. The word nation comes from the Latin word natio, which means birth, meaning that a nation derives its being from the birth line of the people living in it, not merely the physical presence. Now, again, I also think that DNA argument is pretty stupid on its own terms, because I suspect we are quite a lot closer to a national DNA database, in effect, of one form or another, than we like to think we are. To give you an example, if I go out now and commit a crime and leave some DNA behind, the police don't have my DNA on file, not that I'm aware, but they might well have the DNA of a second cousin twice removed who I've never met. They might have his DNA on file. They might have some great uncle who liked to get into fights with the police. They might have his DNA on file, and that will eventually lead them to my door. So I suspect we're closer to some sort of national DNA network than we like to think. But I want to undermine that DNA, that snarky DNA retort, that argument. I want to undermine it more fundamentally by saying that DNA and swabs and needles, DNA testing, none of that is necessary. You can do it entirely on birth certificates. And I want to do that by looking at the Estonian citizenship law that was passed in 1995. Just to recap, in 1991, the Soviet Union falls over and the Estonian people want to get back their sense of nationhood, and they find they've got a lot of unwanted Russian-speaking immigrants in their territory. What do they do about it? Now, a bit of background, a bit of legal background. The legal side is not what civic nationalists and multiculturalists say. A lot of those people, even civic nationalists, they tend to think, well, as long as you come here legally, you buy your ticket here, and you make your trip to the passport office or the home office without committing a serious crime on your way, and between the border and the passport office you don't commit a rape or a murder, then and then you fill out the forms correctly, well, you are a legal immigrant, you are a much valued lawful citizen, you're as English as Oliver Cromwell. Well done you. No. I once heard a multiculturalist say that, or define Britishness as being the ability to sit on Brighton Beach and enjoy the taste of fish and chips. This is drivel. It couldn't be further from reality. The legal framework for citizenship in general has three limbs to it. They've each got a fancy Russian name. The first one is jus solis. Solis meaning soil. That means if you're born on the land, you might have the right to citizenship. The second one is jus domicili, domicile, home. So if you come over here and you live here for a while and you set up some kind of home, then, or you say it's your home, then you might have the right to citizenship. Or that's often referred to as naturalization. And the third one is jus sanguinis. Sanguine meaning blood, so that means bloodline, citizenship by your birthright or by your parentage, by how far back you can take back your parentage. And I find it's interesting that the right to citizenship, simply by virtue of living here, I find it's interesting that it's referred to as naturalization. That suggests that route to citizenship is a bit of an anomaly, that before you can do it, before it becomes enough, you need to be naturalized. You need to be somehow transformed or processed into being an honorary adopted citizen of the nation that you're entering into. Now, going back to Estonia, just to recap, In 1939, Hitler and Stalin, they signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which gives Hitler about 2/3 of Poland, Stalin the other third, and the Baltic states, including Estonia. Then in 1940, Hitler invades Poland, and Stalin thinks, Christ, I better get a move on here. He invades Estonia. And Stalin is a very smart guy. He's also an expert on national identity. He knows he's got a stamp on Estonians' sense of their national identity. And just like our politicians today, just like the sociopathic lemmings in charge of us today, he knows that if he doesn't stamp on that sense of national identity, it will undermine his power. And he also knows that the best way to undermine that sense of national identity is to ship in a load of immigrants to Estonia in order to dilute that sense of national identity. Again, exactly like our politicians know today, running the mass immigration conveyor belt at full blast. It can't go any faster. Any faster. If it could, they would run it faster. All this talk about reforming the immigration system, don't be fooled into thinking that is intended to reduce the level of mass immigration. It is always and everywhere intended to increase the level of mass immigration and to run that immigration conveyor belt, that system, at full blast, as fast as people can be processed. So back to Estonia. Fast forward 51 years. In 1991, Soviet Union falls over under the weight of debt and the corpse of the state authority, exactly like we are going to see over here. And as a result of that, the Estonian people, they wake up, they experience an earthquake followed by a landslide in public opinion. Again, exactly like I think is coming over here at some stage. And they decide, we want to get back our sense of nationhood. It is a valuable asset to us. Again, exactly like we are going to see in our own countries. And they decide they do not want 500,000 Russian-speaking immigrants who they never asked for. They never asked. Their permission was never asked. And they decide they want that 30% of their population, 500,000 Russian-speaking immigrants. They don't want them to have citizenship in Estonia. Estonia is for Estonians. Estonian citizenship is for Estonians. They then choose that third limb, that third principle of citizenship, jus sanguinis, birthright, and the birth lineage. And what they say is, if you can go back to 1940 when Stalin invaded, if you can go back to 1940 and trace your parentage back to 1940, back 55 years, then you have an automatic right to citizenship. If you can't, then you don't. And what that does, that is done with the deliberate intention of denying citizenship to that large 500,000 Russian-speaking minority. And it does so. No DNA profiling, no swabs, no needles, nothing like that. Just birth certificates, and that is easy to do. A lot easier to do than people might realise. If you go on some of those family tree websites, what you'll find is one or two of them, they have a freebie click here link which says click here to get the first three or the most recent 3 generations of your family tree. The reason that's so easy is because that information is public information available at the Public Records Office, at the Register of Births and Deaths, and it's available to the public. It's easy to get at the click of a mouse. So to go back 55 years is quite easy. But there is nobody or no lawful citizen in this country who can't do that. Anyone can do that. It is an easy filter to apply. Very straightforward. And what strikes me as significant is if we in this country were to go back 55 years, well, 2020 minus 55, by my maths, that takes us back to 1965, which is 3 years before Enoch Powell's famous speech warning us about the dangers of mass immigration, which I find poetic. So I'm not here arguing for mass or widespread repatriations. I think they are inevitable. I don't think there's any way to stop that coming. probably towards the end of this decade, possibly the beginning of the next decade. I don't think I need to argue for it. I think that argument is being won. It is being won by our enemies, or the multiculturalists and the civic nationalists, who are so dumb they're making the arguments for us. So I don't need to argue for widespread repatriation. What my point here is to rebut the dunce-like snark of the multicultural left and the civic nationalists saying that we couldn't possibly work out a way to do it.